Gela Kessler, welcome to Weird Church. Nugwam Ingrid, my name is Ingrid, and I just want to offer you the warmest possible welcome that I can. Weird Church is a place of belonging, a place of spiritual exploration, a place where we come together to learn, to wonder, to play, to pray, and to disagree and stay in loving community. This is a place where there are no barriers to belonging. You are welcome, no matter your race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, family structure, whether the idea of setting foot in a church terrifies you or you cannot miss a Sunday. I am the minister of Weird Church and clergy in the United Church of Canada, so I tend to teach through that set of lenses, but it is my honor and privilege to host a community where the wisdom and experience of all is welcomed and celebrated. Before we do anything, I want to recognize that Weird Church and all of us here in the Comox Valley are on stolen land. This is the land of the Pentlach, Satlut, Tsatsitla, Aixen, and Hache, and Comox peoples, caretakers of this land of plenty since time immemorial. And we make this statement anytime we do anything, Weird Church, to make clear to the ancestors past, present, and future that we're here on the land to be of service and in gratitude for their care, and to show that we're trying to live in a good way, knowing that Big C Church was part of the colonization project and has to be a truth teller in the way of decolonization. And invite you into a little bit of learning. The language of trade in this part of the world is Kwakwala. And so in a way, for those of us who are settlers, to decolonize ourselves is to learn Kwakwala, just like if we moved to Spain, we'd learn Spanish. And so the word that we're focusing on for this month is Namyut. Namyut. It means family. For now, though, I want to invite you to take a big deep breath in. If you're in a place where you can make a loud exhale, please do it. And if not, just imagine yourself giving a big juicy exhale, breathing in together and letting it go. We are always on our way from something and to something. So I invite you just to be in this moment, breathing, arriving, present. If you are a person who prays, I'll invite you to pray along with me. And if you are not, I just invite you to turn your heart towards love, towards highest good, opening to all that is yes. Great Creator, Spirit Divine, pulse of love that radiates in and through all things. God, Hashem, Allah, we are here. And though we call you by many names, our desire to come together unites us. As we come together to learn, to grow, to learn how to grow and simply be, we ask that you would hold us. For all the ways we turned away from love and light and from one another in the days behind us, help us to just let it go. Fill our hearts, our heads, our hands with love so that we might walk it every moment of every day. Show us how. Amen. So it is the second week of March, and we are 2 weeks into a 2-month exploration through March and April around belonging. It is a really spiritually rich time of year, a time when folks across traditions and geography are rededicating themselves to their faith, their community, but also their collective story. So last week we spent some time learning about Ramadan and Eid, about Purim and Passover, about Lent and Easter, and the intersection of those longer places of religious commitment, like their root stories. and the commonalities around fasting, prayer, community, charity, and more, along with a grounding connection to an ancient story of freedom. And I issued an invitation to spend the weeks between now and the end of this spiritually rich season, all of those holidays ending April 20th, with an intention to practice, to join together with those who mark this time of year, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Jains, pagans, Hindus, Sikhs, Baha'is, in an intentional time of something. Perhaps that is taking on a new practice or reviving a dormant one. Maybe it's a kind of letting go, a kind of fasting, even temporarily, of some of the less than helpful habits or patterns or behaviors we have adopted. Maybe we can even fast from certain foods or specific beverages. The idea is to ground ourselves in self, community, and spirit, to be aware of and in connection with those three aspects with great intention. And this devotion, this commitment, is one of the founding pieces or building blocks of what we might call faith, which is what we're talking about today. What is faith? What does it mean to have faith? How could you describe faith? How would you define it? In the Christian New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, faith is described as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. I was reading the book, God Was Not in the Fire by Rabbi Daniel Gordis, and he writes, many people today begin their conversations about religion with the proverbial question, do you believe in God? But Judaism, he writes, Judaism understands that if that question is the first one, then people who cannot answer yes will not be able to begin the journey. That's why the question, do you believe in God, is not the central spiritual question. It's not an illegitimate question, but for him, Judaism has chosen a different emphasis, a focus not on belief, but on faith. Not in proving God's existence, but in feeling God's presence. Or what modern Jewish philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel called moments of awe and wonder, moments when God suddenly seems close. Now, in practical terms, say for Muslims, a profession of faith is reciting the Shahada, or the phrase, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet, in Arabic. But that's not really what this is about. Faith is not just reciting the Shahada or other statements of doctrine or belief for any followers of religion, nor is faith merely performing outward acts of worship. It is about a deep inner commitment, a sincere belief in certain principles and actively integrating those beliefs into one's daily life. That could include specific ethical conduct, social responsibility, striving to live according to the teachings of the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, the Vedas, the Suttas, etc., and learning from the leaders, the teachers, the prophets of those traditions. I want to get even simpler though, and I want to turn to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the foundational 12-step program that all other 12-step programs are built off of. Now, if you don't know anything about 12-step programs, there are, in fact, 12 steps. The program is laid out in two main books. One is called Alcoholics Anonymous, also known as the Big Book, and the book called 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, often referred to as the 12 by 12. In the Big Book, the 12th step reads in part, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. The purpose of the steps is to have a spiritual awakening. And it talks about what that means in one of the appendices of the book. I'm going to read from this. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book. Many have the impression that these changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls of the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends are aware of the difference long before the individual who finally realizes that they have undergone a profound alteration in their reaction to life, and that such a change could hardly have been brought about by themselves alone. What often takes place is that our members find they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience or God consciousness. We find that no one need have difficulty with spirituality. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials. Again, that's from the book Alcoholics Anonymous, also known as the Big Book. Now, if we're sticking with AA and we turn to the book known as the 12 by 12, step 3 is when the concept of faith is introduced. Step 3 reads, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood. The book says him, but I will add God as a gender neutral term, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Now, this book says, practicing step 3 is like the opening of a door to which all appearances is still closed and locked. All we need is a key and the decision to swing the door open. There's only one key, and it is called willingness. Once unlocked by willingness, the door opens almost of itself, and looking through it, we shall see a pathway, beside which is an inscription which reads, "This is the way to a faith that works." We can further add that a beginning, even the smallest, is all that is needed. Once we have placed the key of willingness in the lock and have the door ever so slightly open, we find that we can always open it some more. Now, then they address this common fear. It reads, but suppose that instinct still cries out, as it certainly will, if I keep turning my life and my will over to the care of something or somebody else, what will become of me? I'll look like the hole in the donut. This, of course, is the process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster ego and so frustrate spiritual development. The trouble is that this kind of thinking takes no account of the facts, and the facts seem to be these. The more we become willing to depend on a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit. Now, I want to read directly from this chapter, chapter 3. Please remember that this book was written for the first time in 1952. It says, let's examine for a moment this idea of dependence at the level of everyday living. In this area, it is startling to discover how dependent we really are, and how unconscious of that dependence. Every modern house has electric wiring carrying power and light to its interior. We are delighted with this dependence. Our main hope is that nothing will ever cut off the supply of current. By so accepting our dependence upon this marvel of science, we find ourselves more independent personally. Not only are we more independent, we are even more comfortable and secure. Power flows just where it is needed, silently, surely, Electricity, that strange energy so few people understand, meets our simplest daily needs and our most desperate ones too. Ask the polio sufferer confined to an iron lung who depends with complete trust upon a motor to keep the breath of life in him. Now, like all things Weird Church, this idea of faith, how it works in our lives, how we understand it, is an invitation to reflection, an invitation to conversation, an invitation to be present to and wrestle with these age-old questions. And in doing so, to notice our own bubblings up, to notice where we chafe against certain ideas, where our own sharp edges are. And instead of allowing them to repel us away from the conversation, to allow them to invite us into curiosity so that they might teach us about ourselves, so that these crinkly, crunkly bits that we bump up against in this conversation teach us about the ideas we have about God that maybe are just in our subconscious, or our old ideas that we developed in childhood that are rearing their ugly head right now and getting in the way of true connection. These conversations and considerations allow us to open and wonder about faith and to find our way in a way that works for us, but is not only for us. It is in conversation with community. Even if you're listening to this on your own, you are being held in a great wide community of people who are considering this, not only connected to Weird Church, but also in this really big swath of human beings right now around the world who are wrestling with these things. When I was doing my master's degree, my Hebrew teacher, Rabbi Dr. Laura Duhan Kaplan, spoke of her faith and the faith of her fellow Jewish travelers using the story of Jacob. In the story, Jacob wrestles with God through the night, and he is struck on the hip. And from then on, he walks through the world differently. He wrestles with God, and it changes the way he walks in the world. He also, after his wrestling, is blessed. And his change so significant that he is renamed. So I wonder, have you wrestled with the concept of God? Have you wrestled with this idea of faith, not for any doctrinal statement or trying to fit into some box, but in your heart of hearts, in community, in conversation with that which is greater than you? Have you wrestled to the point of walking differently? Have you wrestled to the point of blessing? Have you wrestled to the point that you are so changed it feels like you need a new name? It's a beautiful thing about exploring in community, is being able to play with these ideas, try them out, try out something else, right? I invite you to take some time to reflect personally about this. Maybe something has sparked and you need to write a journal. Maybe you want to go walk by the ocean, or wheel yourself along the path in the forest. However you do that, I invite you into this very noble wrestling about faith, what it is, even about God. Maybe you want to listen to some music or read some poetry. But the invitation for this week is to consider first how you have had faith in the past, even in ways that you may not have recognized before. How much faith do you have in your Wi-Fi connection? How much faith do you have when you flip that switch? And with the dependence on the electricity that flows through your home or the water that flows through your taps, how much better has your life become? So once you take some time to think about those places of faith, whether it's gravity or electricity, I invite you to consider practices that grow that faith. At our in-person service at Weird Church on Sunday, someone described faith as like a big net. Not that the gaps in the net are big, the gaps are quite tight, like the threading in the net. And that it's holding us, but it's holding so much more than us. And then someone else said that the practice involves tending that net. People who fish for a living or even for fun, when they have nets like that, they're always mending and checking and tending those nets. So what are the practices that tend your net of faith? Even if it's brand new, it needs tending. I mean, and a bonus would be to share that practice with a friend. There's this idea in spiritual community that a person, and this comes from a Celtic practice, a soul friend is called an anamkara, a soul friend. And maybe this is someone you can talk to regularly. What I want to say before I conclude is that all of us who make up the Weird Church community, which is in the Comox Valley, reaching as far as Australia, we together are a group of humans that would normally not find ourselves pulled together. We do not hold necessarily to a certain set of doctrines or ideas. Some of us do fall under religious umbrellas, I'll say. But I have worked in leadership in churches for almost 20 years. And even in the churches that speak faith statements and doctrinal statements every week together, even in the churches that have very, very clear statements, what one person in a pew understands as God and faith is rarely the same as the person sitting right next to them. And so in this far-reaching, wandering community of spiritual seekers is this beautiful multiplicity of understanding. And when we layer in and learn and understand and wonder and dream together, there is so much richness, so much learning, so much blessing. And so I want to offer you a blessing. When you finish listening to the sounds of my voice and you carry on with whatever thing comes next, know that there is no place you can go. There is no thing you can do or avoid doing. There is no you that you can be that will ever not be loved. No matter who you are, no matter what you have done or not done, you are held in the great web of love that holds and animates all things. And I challenge you to walk that love in all you do, because the world is in desperate need of you to do that. Amen. May it be so.